Okay, so you want to own a golf course. 150 acres of your own land, mowed to within a tenth of an inch. Your name on the scorecard. A tee sheet that fills itself every Saturday, and a bar at the end of the 18th where the money collects itself while you play whenever you feel like it. That's the plan in your head, and it's not a bad plan. Walk onto any decent course on a Saturday morning in June, and it looks like the easiest business in the world. The lot is full by 7. Every tee time from 6:40 to 11 is booked. The range is a wall of noise. You look at that and you think, this place must be printing money. More golfers, more green fees, more money. Simple. Here's the problem. You are looking at the 4 hours a week that lie to you the most. Go back on a Tuesday in the second week of March. 41 degrees, wind out of the north, 11 players on the entire property. The pumps are still running, the crew is still there. The insurance is still due. And the water bill that arrives at the end of that month does not care that nobody came. The truth is that a golf course is not really a golf business. It is a very expensive landscaping company that sells food, sells events, and eventually sells land, and happens to let people hit a ball across the inventory. The moment you understand that, everything about how a course makes money and how it quietly loses money starts to make sense. There isn't one type of golf course. There are several, and each is a different business wearing the same collared shirt. At the top sits the private club, charging an initiation fee to join and then dues on top of it. Initiation might be $5,000 at a modest suburban club, $50,000 to $100,000 at a strong metropolitan one, with dues of $6,000 to $15,000 a year. Here's the part that matters. That money arrives whether the member plays 200 rounds or 0. Below that sits the daily fee public course selling access 1 round at a time at $30 to $120. The municipal course priced deliberately low and often losing money. A city absorbs quietly. And the resort course charging $400 a round to people on vacation who aren't counting. Each is a different bet on the same question. Do you make your money from a large number of people paying a little per visit, or a small number paying a lot, whether they visit or not? That decision shapes every other number in the business. Now, here's where the naive model breaks down. You think the expensive part is buying the course. It usually isn't. There is a strange fact at the center of this industry. A great many golf courses trade for far less than it would cost to build them. Building a new 18-hole course from raw land runs somewhere between $5 and $15 million, and yet functioning 18-hole courses sell all the time in the $1 to $4 million range. Distressed ones sell for less than the cost of the clubhouse roof. Read that again. The build cost is $15 million. The sale price is $2. That gap is not a bargain. That gap is a message. When an asset consistently trades below replacement cost, it is because nobody wants to replace it. The cheap purchase price is the first honest number in the entire transaction, and almost every first-time buyer misreads it as an opportunity instead of a warning. There's a second number hiding behind it. A public course draws the overwhelming majority of its play from within a 20 to 30-minute drive of the first tee. That's it. That's your entire addressable market. Not the state, not the metro area, a half-hour radius. Golf participation runs somewhere around 8 to 12% of adults, and only a fraction of those play often. Run that honestly on a small market, and you will sometimes find the course you're buying needs more golfers than the area contains. So you buy it for $2 million and you think you got in cheap. What you actually bought is 150 acres that has to be watered, mowed, drained, sprayed, and repaired every single day for the rest of its life. Plus, a set of aging systems buried under the ground that nobody has looked at in 20 years. The single largest hidden capital item on a golf course is the irrigation system. Underneath every fairway is a network of pipe, wire, valves, and typically 12 to 1800 sprinkler heads, all connected to a central pump station. That system has a working life of roughly 25 to 35 years. When it reaches the end of that life, you do not repair it. You replace it. A full irrigation replacement on 18 holes costs between $1 and $4 million. Sit with that for a second. You bought the course for $2 million. The sprinkler system alone can cost more than the purchase price, and irrigation doesn't fail politely on a schedule. It fails one blown pipe at a time, one dry patch on the 7th fairway at a time. Here's the trap. The seller knows exactly how old that system is. You will find out in year 3. Then the maintenance fleet, the line item almost nobody budgets correctly because from the parking lot you never see it. A single fairway mower costs $60,000 to $110,000. Stack the full fleet, mowers, sprayers, aerators, utility vehicles, and you're looking at $700,000 to $1.5 million of machinery sitting in a shed, depreciating, requiring a mechanic on staff to keep it running. Add 60 to 80 carts, leased at $80 to $140 each per month, and you've committed to $60,000 to $100,000 a year, whether anybody rides them or not. So far, this is just an expensive piece of land. Now let's talk about what it costs to keep it alive, because this is the part that explains everything else. A golf course does not have customers the way a restaurant does. It has acres. And acres cost money whether anybody walks on them or not. The annual maintenance budget for an 18-hole public course typically runs $500,000 to $1 million. A well-kept private club runs $1 to $2 million. It is not optional, and it barely flexes. You cannot mow the greens less because it rained on your revenue. Now do the math the way an owner does. Take a course with a $900,000 maintenance budget. Add clubhouse staff, management, insurance, property taxes, and utilities, and your total fixed operating cost is comfortably $1.4 million a year. Call it $117,000 a month, leaving the building before a single golfer arrives. The average 18-hole course in the United States hosts around 30,000 rounds a year. Divide 30,000 rounds into a $1.4 million cost base. Your cost per round, before you have poured a single beer, is roughly $46. Read that again. $46 per round just to open the gate. And what does the average golfer pay? The tee sheet is not full of $80 weekend mornings. It's full of twilight rates at $30, senior rates at $28, league rates at a discount. And the men's club member who paid a flat annual fee in February and is now playing his 60th round of the year at an effective price of $9. Blend it all together, and average revenue per round at a typical public course lands somewhere between $35 and $55. Which means on green fees alone, a great many golf courses in this country operate somewhere between a thin margin and an outright loss. Picture 2 golfers walking off the 18th green. The first shakes hands, loads his clubs in the trunk, and drives home. He paid $48 and used 4.5 hours of the property's capacity. The second shakes hands, walks into the grill, and sits at the bar for 2 hours with 3 friends. 4 beers, 2 sandwiches, a round of shots when somebody's putt drops. Which of those 2 is the profitable customer? It's the second one, and it isn't close. The first golfer's $48 is almost entirely consumed by the 4.5 hours he just used. The second golfer's $90 bar tab carries a margin around 70% on the beer and 30 to 40 on the food, and consumed almost none of the course's capacity to produce. This is the central inversion of the whole business. The golfer is not the customer. The golfer is the traffic. The course is the thing that gets a specific kind of person, with disposable income and free time, to drive to your property and stay there for 6 hours. What you sell them once they're there is a separate business, and it's the one with the margin. Now, water. Because water is where a golf course stops being a business decision and becomes a geography decision. An 18-hole course in a hot, dry climate can consume between 100,000 and 1 million gallons of water per day in peak summer. Over a year, a single course routinely uses 40 to 100 million gallons. Where that water comes from is the single most important fact about the property, more important than the design, the clubhouse, or the location. If the course holds its own wells or senior water rights attached to the deed, the water is close to free, and your only real cost is the electricity to pump it. If the course buys treated municipal water at commercial rates, the bill can run $200,000 to over $500,000 a year in the Southwest. That is the difference between a viable business and a slow bankruptcy, and it was determined by paperwork signed decades before you arrived. Here's the catch. Water rights are not permanent the way a deed is. In drought conditions, municipalities restrict outdoor irrigation, and golf courses sit near the front of the line for cuts because they are the most visible non-essential water user in any city. Some Western courses have been forced to remove acres of turf entirely, not as a design choice but as a compliance requirement. The other thing you're buying is a payroll. The most important employee at a golf course is not the head professional. It's the superintendent, who is managing a living organism, a few acres of grass cut to 1/10 of an inch, kept alive at the edge of what the plant can survive, under constant threat of a fungal disease that can turn a green from perfect to dead in about 72 hours. Under him sits a crew of 10 to 25 seasonal staff starting before sunrise, because the mowers have to be off the greens before the first group tees off. With payroll taxes, that crew is commonly 40 to 55% of the entire maintenance budget. Now, here's where the psychology becomes as important as the math, because almost nothing on a golf course is shaped the way it is by accident. Notice that on the overwhelming majority of 18-hole courses, the 9th hole finishes at or near the clubhouse. That is not a consequence of the terrain. It's a returning nines routing, and it exists so every group passes the building at the halfway point, 3.5 hours in, hungry, thirsty, with 9 holes still to play. The turn is not a rest stop. It's a second point of sale, deliberately placed at the exact moment a person is most likely to buy a hot dog and a beer they didn't plan on. The beverage cart works the same way. A golfer who has to decide to walk somewhere to buy a drink often doesn't. A golfer who has one brought to him on the 12th tee usually does. Then there's the private club membership structure. A large initiation fee up front, frequently non-refundable. Dues billed monthly regardless of use. And a food and beverage minimum, an amount you must spend at the restaurant each quarter or simply be billed for anyway. Think about what that does. It converts a variable, weather-dependent, seasonal revenue stream into a fixed one. The member who plays 4 times a year still pays full dues. Just like a gym, the member who doesn't show up is a beautiful customer. And then there's the off-season, the cost that surprises people most because it feels like it shouldn't exist. In the northern half of the country, the course is closed 4 to 5 months and still costs money every one of those days. The insurance, the property taxes, the equipment leases, and the debt service all continue at exactly the same rate. A meaningful number of courses generate nearly all of their annual revenue in about 60% of the year, while paying 100% of their costs across all 12 months of it. So how does a country that spent the 90s opening a new golf course roughly every single day end up closing them at nearly the same pace for the next 2 decades? Through the 80s and 90s, American golf expanded at a speed that had no relationship to the number of people who actually played. Developers built courses not because the golf economics worked, but because a course made the houses around it worth more. Municipalities built them for prestige. Resorts built them to fill hotel rooms. At the peak, the country was adding roughly 350 courses a year. Then, the demand curve refused to cooperate. The number of American golfers plateaued and then declined through the 2000s. Supply had grown by thousands of courses. Demand hadn't. And a golf course is the least flexible asset imaginable. You cannot shrink it, you cannot mothball it for a season, and you cannot easily convert 150 acres of shaped turf into anything else. So the market corrected the only way it could. From roughly 2006 onward, the United States closed more courses than it opened for well over 15 consecutive years, at a pace of roughly 150 to 200 net closures annually. Look at Myrtle Beach for the concentrated version. The Grand Strand built itself into the highest density golf destination in America, more than 100 courses on one stretch of coastline, all competing for the same visiting golfer, all discounting against each other through package deals. Lower green fees meant deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance meant worse conditions. Worse conditions meant fewer bookings. More than 20 courses in that market closed, many sold as residential land, because the dirt under a failing course was worth more than the course. Here's the structural observation, and it's the point of the story. Those courses did not close because people stopped playing golf. They closed because the math connecting a fixed, non-reducible cost base to a variable, weather-dependent, price-competitive revenue stream broke down. A full parking lot on a Saturday tells you nothing about whether the structure underneath can hold. So, in plain mechanical terms, how does a course actually make money? The engine is contribution per round times rounds, minus fixed costs. Take our course with a fixed annual nut of $1.4 million. Say the blended green fee plus cart is $52, and the variable cost of servicing one more round is about $8. Contribution per round is $44. Divide 1.4 million by 44, and you need roughly 32,000 rounds a year just to break even. In the northern half of the country, you might get 210 playable days. That's 152 rounds every single playable day, including the Tuesday in March with 11 players on the property. Which means the Saturdays have to carry 300 rounds to cover the Tuesdays that carry 40. Now take away 18 days to rain. That's 2,700 rounds and $120,000 of contribution that simply never existed. A wet spring in this business is not an inconvenience. It's a line item. This is why the second revenue stream isn't a bonus. It's the business. Food and beverage is the largest. A course with a real restaurant, a grill at the turn, and beverage carts can generate $300,000 to over $1 million a year at gross margins around 70% on drinks. On many well-run public courses, that alone is the difference between a loss and a profit. Events are the most underrated number in the industry. A corporate outing books 120 players at a package rate, guarantees the revenue in advance, and fills a weekday morning that would otherwise have run 40 rounds. Weddings are better still. A course with a banquet room and a view of the 18th green is competing in the wedding venue market, not the golf market, at $15,000 to $50,000 per event. Book 30 weddings a year, and you've built a business that happens to have a golf course attached. The driving range has the best unit economics on the property. A bucket costs you a few cents of ball wear and sells for $8 to $15. And then there's the one that quietly explains a large share of golf course ownership in America, the land itself. A golf course is 150 acres of open, landscaped, well-drained, road-accessible ground, usually surrounded by established housing and existing utility connections. In a growing metro, that isn't a description of a golf course. It's a description of a residential subdivision that hasn't been built yet, and its value as entitled housing can be several multiples of its value as a golf course. Here's the trap on that strategy. Rezoning a golf course is one of the most reliably contested processes in American local government. The homeowners who paid a premium for a house on the 16th fairway will organize, hire counsel, and fight it for a decade. Many courses carry deed restrictions that prohibit conversion outright. Buyers have lost this bet, ending up owning a money-losing golf course they can neither operate profitably nor convert. So let's look at a full year, because this is where the two very different versions of this business reveal themselves. In the optimistic scenario, you own a well-located public course in a growing suburb with limited competition. 42,000 rounds at a blended $54 is $2.27 million in golf revenue. Food and beverage does $600,000. 28 outings and 22 weddings add another $800,000. Gross revenue lands near $3.9 million against roughly $3.3 million in cost, and you finish with about $600,000 of operating profit on a property you bought for $3 million. That happens. In the realistic scenario, nothing exotic goes wrong. It just rains. You lose 22 playable days across a wet spring and a storm in September, and rounds fall from 42,000 to 33,000. A new course opens 11 miles away and discounts aggressively, so your blended rate slips from 54 to 48. Golf revenue drops by nearly $700,000, and the weekday outings you lost take event revenue down with them. Meanwhile, the irrigation system throws 2 mainline breaks for $140,000 in unplanned repairs, and your insurance renews 18% higher. Your fixed costs did not move at all, because they can't. Same property, same staff, same grass. And the year finishes in the red. The gap between those 2 years on one property is close to $1 million, and almost none of that swing shows up as a dramatic visible event. No fire, no scandal. Just weather, a competitor's discount, and a pipe under the 12th fairway that finally gave out, compounding quietly until the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet looks nothing like the plan. So if you do buy a golf course, remember the thing that actually determines whether you survive it. That full parking lot on Saturday morning was never the business. It was the traffic report. The business is what those people do after they finish playing, and whether the ground underneath them is worth more with the grass on it or without.